Hello. In the earliest days of the pandemic, conspiracy theories began spreading about this new disease. This is something that it is to be expected. It is an unfortunate aspect of human civilization that any event of a major impact is going to spread conspiracy theories. These conspiracy theories were tired old yarns regarding 5G radiation, the new cell phone standard that had just been established. I call them tired because we had seen these types of conspiracy theories before with concerning 4G, 3G, 2G, and if you go back far enough, you'll find them concerning high-tension power lines as well. Now, to be clear, these conspiracy theories were not only improbable, but they were impossible. No less than Albert Einstein argued in his 1921 Nobel Prize-winning paper concerning the photoelectric effect that there's a difference between ionizing and non-ionizing radiation, and that cell phone radiation is of the non-ionizing kind, so therefore harmless. The conspiracy theories specifically claimed that COVID wasn't real. Remember, March of 2020. COVID wasn't real. They were saying that either the virus didn't exist or that it did exist but it was benign, it was harmless, and that 5G radiation was actually the real culprit. So either that's what was making everyone sick, or it was activating something in that inane virus or inane whatever that was actually making us sick. So and their proof of this was that there were, in fact, people were getting infected near 5G towers. And then this conspiracies devolved into whatever super conspiracies concerning like the Illuminati or George Soros or whatever they were claiming. Most of us, we dismissed these conspiracy theories as irrational nonsense, right? We're like, okay, the reason there's higher infection rates near 5G towers is because, well, they only put the 5G towers in high population centers, right? So there was more room for the conspiracy theories there was more room for COVID to spread, right? There was more opportunities for it to spread and infect people. In short, these people were mistaking a correlation for a cause. But then something happened. In the earliest days of the lockdown, someone set fire to a 5G cell phone tower in Aintree, England, near Liverpool. And this was followed by another, and then another, and then another, until the total number of burned down cell phone towers numbered in the hundreds. And these were all a direct result of these conspiracy theories, right? All these individual acts of arson accomplished was to interrupt cell phone service, no doubt angering locals who all of a sudden couldn't use their phones. But what they should have done was served as a beacon. They should have served as a beacon to warn us that the war against COVID was going to have two fronts, right? The virus itself, the biological front, where we're going to fight the actual virus, and a social front, right? A social battle against misinformation and conspiracy theorizing, right? I'm going to make a controversial claim. The biological front is over. We won, yay, good for us. Right? There's nothing we don't know about this virus that matters in a practical way. Right? We know how it spreads, we know how it reproduces, we know what happens when we get it. Right? We know how to stop it, right? We wear masks so that you don't infect me, right? And we all have vaccine, we're all vaccinated, so that if we do get infected, right, our symptoms are benign to nothing, right? Our ability to develop vaccines was accomplished so fast, it was almost like the stuff of science fiction. Within a year, we had 4 viable vaccines, counting the one over in England, right? Now we have dozens of them. We have the ability to adjust to variants in the vaccine, that we measure those times, we measure that time in days and weeks rather than months and years as we would have in the past. But we're still wearing masks, right? We're still getting shots, we're still avoiding unnecessary gatherings. And we're doing so because as a civilization, we're not united in this front. Right? And this is the social pandemic. Right? It's the struggle against the obstinate denial of science, expertise, the concept of evidence, and the basic rules of argumentation. Most of us have been following the guidelines and listening to the expert consensus, right? We've been doing all of the things. But there's enough of us out there who haven't been. And it's not just that they're not doing it, they refuse to willingly help. Right? Mask mandates have been falling based on court challenges by people who think something else is going on. What that something else is, they never really say. Right? People have been refusing to get vaccinated because they just have questions about them. Right? Questions, that have answers and that have been answered. What I'm proposing is that we have to make a paradigmatic shift towards the recognition that there is that the scientific consensus, academic consensus, expert consensus is the best thing we have as a civilization. In fact, it is what drives civilization forward. Okay? And we have to recognize that this is going to be in opposition to this sort of misinformation and conspiratorial thinking. Right? And the first step to doing that is the recognition that this is a cultural problem, right? This problem is ingrained into the culture, right? These anti-vaccination conspiracy theories didn't generate out of nothing in March of 2020, right? You can go back to 1790 when Edward Jenner first popularized the method of using cowpox pustules to inoculate people against smallpox and find anti-medicine, anti-vaccination positions back then, right? Let's remember that a little over a decade ago, there was a different anti-vaccination conspiracy theory, right? It was spurned on by actor model Jenny McCarthy on daytime television. And the claim being made then was that there was a link between the childhood MMRV vaccine and autism, right? A completely unfounded and subsequently discredited claim. But the claim was there. It's that people encounter these conspiracy theories and this misinformation, this pseudoscience, and they don't know how to handle it. They can't make the differentiation. Right? So what I'm proposing is that we teach young children, the tools of philosophical inquiry, scientific method, and skepticism, so that these first beliefs never take hold. Right? I want to, in short, immunize the culture against this type of thinking. Right? I generally teach, every semester, I teach first-year college students. Over there somewhere, I don't know which direction I'm pointing. And I am generally the first person who teaches them any kind of critical thinking skills in the classroom. And this represents a failure of our educational system. Right? I should not be the first person to teach them that when you argue against the claim being made rather than the person, right? The fallacy of ad hominem. Right? I should not be the first person to instruct them that just because something is popular means that it's true. Right? Or conversely, just because something is unpopular means that it's false, right? Is the fallacy of ad populum, right? They should have walked into high school with this ability. But we don't teach it to young children. We don't teach it to 7 or 8-year-olds because we don't think that, they can handle it. Like we're doubtful they can handle this kind of thing. But then we don't teach it to older children either, right? My college students, they never have to learn it because my course is optional. They could have taken a different course. So instead, we leave it up to adults to decide. Right? And at that point, either if they don't know it, they're never going to. Right? Once a person gets to a certain age, teaching them new things is very difficult. Right? So what we need to do is immunize the culture. Each iteration of the anti-vax conspiracy theory is a fruit of, it's a vine from the same root, right? So we have people that, any person that's selling the discredited and debunked homeopathic remedies of 18th century physician Samuel Hahnemann. Every person selling, every acupuncturist that claims that their method can do anything more than treat temporary minor pain, to the people in the beginning of the pandemic selling colloidal silver as a panacea, right? Those are the obvious iterations of this type of thinking, right? But we all experience more subtle ones as well, right? To somebody that says, I don't think I don't think they want to cure us. They just want to treat us because there's more profit in treatment than in a cure, right? That's a direct attack on every single person that works in medicine. Right? Maybe you have an aunt that says, oh, they're just not telling us something about these GMOs, right? That postulates a they, right? A they that's in charge of keeping a secret about genetically modified food, even though every viable scientific study into genetically modified food says that they're just as safe as all of the rest of it, as any other food, non-modified versions. Right? Or for instance, we all buy organic. Right? We buy organic food because the word organic makes us feel better. Right? We have an emotional attachment to this word. But an organic tomato and a regular tomato are the same tomato. It's just one is grown without chemicals. So we think it's healthier. But there's no evidence of this. I mean, all organic food really is a less efficient way of growing food that's largely a marketing label based on dubious science from the 1920s. But when we counter this, right, it conflicts with our feelings. And our feelings, they override our rational brain, and we stick to the feelings rather than the facts. We don't possess the tools. So I'm proposing that we teach the youngest of us these tools, right? We teach them so that we can immunize the culture. As medical science tells us, immunization is more efficient than treatment, right? So we need to immunize the children so that when the first belief comes, they can reject it. The study into conspiracy theories as a phenomenon concludes that the biggest predictor of whether someone's going to believe in a conspiracy theory is not age, it's not income level, it's not even education level. It's whether or not they already believe in a different conspiracy theory. And that first theory is never the 5G microchip, Bill Gates, George Soros, death microchip vaccine thing, whatever they're claiming, right? It's a belief, right? It's a suspicion based on feelings. It's the idea that I just don't trust these doctors, right? And that forms the seed for the first belief. And that first belief leads to a second, and then a third, until finally the person, they believe that the Queen of England is a shape-shifting lizard monster and that the earth is flat. So immunization of the culture is important, right? Give them the tools of philosophical inquiry, scientific investigation, and skeptical questioning at a very young age, right? Teach them that questioning is important. Teach them that claims need evidence. Right? Teach them that the evidence needs to draw a straight line to the conclusion. Teach these kids that if you have two competing explanations for the same phenomenon, right, the explanation that's more likely to be true is the one that requires the fewest steps, makes the fewest assumptions, and is generalizable to the outside world. Right? In short, let's just teach them Occam's razor. I don't think there's anything there that they can't handle at the age of 7. Right? But our current education system does not do this. Right? Our current education system teaches details rather than method. It is important to understand that Einstein threw Newton's conception of gravity on its head. But it's just as important, maybe even more important, to understand how he got there, right? How he arrived at that conclusion. Right? And it's just as important to understand that there were people at the time resistant to what Einstein was saying because how dare he question Sir Isaac Newton? Right? He was a knight. Method matters as much as conclusion, maybe even more so. But the conclusion matters more than the person making it. What I want is to educate and immunize the culture against conspiratorial thinking. The COVID-19 pandemic has given us a unique perspective, the unique position in history that we can we've been forced to take a step back, and now we can look at the various facets of our society and see what's working and what's not. It has given us a much more tangible example of the dangers of irrational thinking that extend far beyond the hypothetical nightmares of your average philosophy professor. During the lockdown, we all recognize that education is one of the most important aspects of our civilization. We should be able to take that education, or take that part of our civilization and use it so that we can prevent the next social pandemic from happening. Thank you.